Floor
Yes,
is yours, sir.
through the chair, I want to thank Dr. Pace and Ms. Parham for this presentation. Obviously, there was an elevated discourse around food, lunch, and other areas that we have sought to address in food and nutrition from not only a menu standpoint, but also from an economic inclusionary standpoint. So, with respect to that, can you go back to slide 3?
Yes.
Just have a couple of questions specifically.
Put it back up. Okay.
There we go.
On on slide 3,
Is that
number
correct?
3, number 3. I'm sorry, go back to number 3 at the bottom.
Right before that one.
Go back before that one.
This one.
Yeah.
The fourth bullet. Can you speak to what does that actually look like? Locally inspired and culturally diverse menus, recipes, and foods. Can you speak to that?
Yes, sir. Through the chair. Yes, definitely. One of the things that we can do with our menu, and we do, and we always have, is that within the items that are available, schools have they can make, let's say, ground beef. In one school, the beefaroni or a picadillo might be a more popular item, and our managers have the ability to. That's a very simple example, but our managers have the ability to change the items to meet the recipes that are more well received at different schools. Also, when we work with our, pre-pandemic, when we had a lot of interaction with our chefs, we had them helping us make different wraps and different recipes that are more Miami themed. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but items that our kids like and really fit the taste and the kinds of foods that our kids here are familiar with.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand it's part of the guiding principles, but like, what would be an example of some locally inspired and culturally diverse menu options? What would be an example? I know you say what they can
Yeah.
do, but like, what are some examples of that?
We have multiple different rice and bean recipes where some of the beans it's a garbanzo. I'm going to have to be honest with you and tell you off the top of my head, I don't have the recipe name, but we have the ability and plan so that different types of beans and different types of rice with different types of seasoning can be used and are made in schools for different flavors. Black beans and rice, kidney beans, garbanzo beans. Our rice recipes are actually something that is very popular in pretty much all of our schools.
Okay. Yeah, through the chair, I hear Board Member Navarro Tomato con pollo.
Yes, I
yeah,
should have said a rose con pollo.
Yeah,
My
that's
accent's not so good.
chicken and rice. But I just wanted to get a sense of what that diversity looks like, and that we make sure that we represent all of the segments of this community. Slide number 4, please. Fifth bullet. Can we speak to the $64 million in food and supplies annually, and what does the inclusionary level look like? I know I've had some follow-up to the item that I proffered in the percentage was abysmal, if not atrocious, in terms of the level of inclusion. Can we speak to that specifically? I thought I had a higher number. I thought the number was closer to 100 million, but I'm looking at 64 million. Is that on average? Was that last year? Is that the year before? Is that currently? Because it doesn't have any time stamp on that particular expenditure. So what time frame does that constitute?
This is what's budgeted for the 2021-2022 school year. I should have had the date on this particular slide. That $64 million in food and supplies is what is in the budget this year. And it has fluctuated greatly over the past 3 or 4 years, as I know, as part of the response to H19 because of the closures and the changes that occurred with the pandemic. But definitely, Dr. Gallen, through the chair, to address your question, Absolutely. We have had great connections working with our OEO office and with our procurement department to really reach out to our local certified minority vendors. One of the silver linings, for lack of a better way of saying it, because the supply chain challenges have not really had any silver linings except for the opportunity to reach out and have more local vendors. And just last week, we were able to make a purchase, an emergency purchase, through our local certified African-American owned minority business for an emergency supply of trays that we needed. And it was an excellent opportunity because we had made those connections. We continue to meet and look at other items. We have a new RF, the district is literally, I believe today, and I know Mr. DeBarros was here earlier, has released a RFP, and we have many more opportunities because of the ability to reach out and connect with the certified vendors.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes.
How much was that purchase for the trays?
Close to 30,000? For
Approximately
About 40,000.
40,000, yes, sir.
Okay. Any other, as a part of this $64 million proposition?
I absolutely believe that as the year goes on, that will totally be increased. That is the total annual budget. That is right here.
Yeah.
So we're working through it,
Yeah,
yes.
through the chair, I understand, and what data points I looked at, respectfully, is not what we're doing now. What we're going to do prospectively is important. And I want to say this to my colleagues and those who are listening. The discourse on inclusion is not restricted to African American firms. Although I advocate very strongly and I go where the data takes me, that's where we go. That's what a disparity study does. It's not Dr. Gallen is feeling this way, Board Member Mendigo. The data takes us to certain places. And the data that takes us to those disparate segments of this community takes us to African American. It takes us to women. It takes us to veteran. It takes us there. That's what the data tells us. So I just want to say that parenthetically, when you look at food service, it wasn't restricted to African American. I think local and other segments of this community were also not reflective of the inclusion levels that we should have. I'm intrigued by what we're going to do prospectively. I would love to use the word I'm encouraged. I'm not there yet because what we have done historically in this particular space has been unacceptable. I think when we talk about the GOB percentage levels that this community lamented about and continues to lament about, that they find somewhat loathsome. If you look at the percentage levels coming out of food and nutrition, and this budget alone is $64 million, and we've had budgets that came closer to $100 million, those percentage levels are even much more egregious in terms of how small they are. So I just wanted to give that as an example where we're in December. The budget process starts in July. $64 million, I can do a expenditure to date report. So if we want to kind of say a half of the year, if we budgeted $64 million, we halfway through, perhaps we've already expended $30 million, perhaps. And now we anecdotally will cite a $40,000 purchase with trays. That's why I'm not inspired or encouraged. I'm not inspired or encouraged. And I want to thank my colleagues on the board for supporting the item that served as a catalyst for us to have this courageous conversation in a space that we have never really wandered into, a space that has an opportunity for women-owned businesses, Hispanic businesses, African-American businesses, local businesses. And that's a real nut that we have to crack. So through the chair, can you square the $64 million in food and supplies annually with $127 million in federal meal reimbursements annually? That was a delta of potentially $63 million between those two particular numbers. Can you square that, please? I'm looking at bullet 4 and 5.
Yeah, through the chair, yes. The federal meal reimbursements have to cover the entire salaries, fringes, all other expenses. So it's not just for the food and supplies. So it's not when we receive a meal reimbursement, it covers every single expense related to operating the food service program. So that is, that's what that difference is. Yes.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Where's the $5 million that I'm missing out of those two? If you're going to reconcile those two numbers, I'm coming with 68 plus 64 is 132, and I'm looking at 127 in reimbursements. So if I do the 64 in food and supplies, I do the 68 in employee salaries and benefits, that gives me 132. Where's the $5 million? There's a difference. There's a deficit of $5 million. There's a gap of $5 million.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Through the chair, these numbers are not inclusive of the entire budget. There are other revenues that come in. We receive the commodity foods that we receive are also considered part of a revenue, and then the appropriations also cover things like our capital outlay, maintenance chargebacks, cost of other purchase services. We are charged for energy. We pay the district energy costs as well as indirect costs. So the entire budget. I was really giving numbers, or we were providing numbers here. This is not the full budget.
Yeah. I'm just going by MDCPS food and nutrition by the numbers.
Yeah.
So I was kind of trying to add up all the numbers, and I have a $5 million delta that's questionable. Slide number 7, please.
That's it.
With respect to some of the challenges that we've had, what's the plan of action? Because I'm looking at, and I it's not a secret, I did a post and I got a lot of feedback. If you want to see the feedback, it's from around the country, different districts. Oh, Dr. Gallen, this is what we did, certain things. So we've had some hits and some misses, but I think the challenges are not restricted to Miami-Dade, and I've seen some districts that have really been able to overcome some of the supply chain demands and challenges. How would you all describe the plan of action to mitigate and overcome some of these issues moving forward?
Through the chair, I'll begin, Dr. Gallen. First of all, the actions that we've taken is some of what Ms. Parham has mentioned, how we look at the menu items. If there's a issue with the menu items with the supply, the cafeteria managers have the ability to make that substitution item. We communicate it as soon as possible. Looking at, as Ms. Parham mentioned before, when we have situations with our students that may have issues with the meal, the preparation, the way it looks, the way it is on the tray, we are asking them, and there will be follow-up with principals into making sure they ensure this process, that the child comes back to the point of service so they can have that item, that the entire tray fixed and ensure that. And we will have a marketing campaign to start in January in our cafeterias, working not just within food nutrition, but with entire school operations and communications to ensure students know that process. They can see it, just like we put our signage up about COVID. This is what we're going to take on an endeavor in January to make sure the signage is there where students know what the process is. If there's an issue with your tray, we understand, hey, rather than post it, or if you want to post it, that's fine, but bring it back up so we can fix it and correct it and get you exactly what you need. And that is not only just for the students, but the faculty and staff, all of those, so they can actually get that word to students. It was one more you said.
Yeah, well, through the chair, I was specifically looking at this slide because it talks about some of the national challenges relative to the food and supply shortages, namely the second column. So, for example, if we had to make an emergency purchase because of some trays, that means either that was because we didn't purchase them or we couldn't get them. And if there are some pervasive, consistent challenges around the country that other districts are facing, but other districts are overcoming, these challenges have been listed. So shortages of raw materials with aluminum, increased prices and reduced availability, increased demand for packaging, et cetera, and paper items. So this is a logistical challenge. And I'm saying, what is the plan prospectively to make sure that we don't find ourselves in this particular situation? I heard an RFP is coming out. I heard that may address some issues of inclusion, but just moving forward, what would be the plan?
As you just stated, the RFP coming out, and I want actually is going to double back and hopefully give you hope, more than a glimmer of hope. Well, got it. It's
Okay. All right.
however,
That-
outside of
Yeah.
that,
Okay.
I can address that we have been meeting with OEO on a monthly basis. In which we have discussions with OEO Food and Nutrition for opportunities. So we are looking at through what we call seasonal item purchases to work with certified minority vendors to bring them in, looking at where there are, as Ms. Parham mentioned, certain cultural items that may be popular at schools. We're looking at how we can do that and meeting with the vendors that OEO connects us with to do showcases on the items they have available so we can then look at making having opportunities to bring them into the fold with food and nutrition and providing that to our students.
My last question through the chair. Is the OEO collaboration relatively new or strengthened?
The OEO,
Collaboration, is it new or is it strengthened? Has that always been the case? Because the inclusion levels doesn't
No,
reflect that.
no, we
Through the
began
chair,
this.
please.
I'm sorry, through the chair. We began this about approximately 3 months ago. 3 months ago, and we continue this monthly meeting through the chair.
So prior to, through the chair, prior to the H item, was there not prior collaboration with OEO over the years?
Well, no, there was collaboration with OEO prior, but not monthly. We've had our fairs.
So it's been strengthened.
Yes, it's been strengthened. I
Okay.
apologize. Yes, it's been strengthened.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few more, but I'll stop there. Thank you, Dr. Pace. Thank you, Ms. Parham, and Mr. Bueno. I know you were involved in this particular process as well. Thank you.